Okay. So this is Ala Shaheen. I'm from DARPE, the abbreviation of Development Assistance Roadmap Portal in the Middle East. DARPE supports small, medium-sized businesses, consulting firms, non-governmental organizations, working at the national level or regional level of the Middle East only, mainly. We support them to grow their businesses by winning more grants, more contracts in a competitive, consistent, and thoughtful manner. We support them by aggregating all the data and information necessary for their business development and partnership requirements, starting from tenders and grant opportunities towards database and contact information of clients, potential donors, and potential international organizations, as well as potential partners of consulting firms and non-governmental organizations, down the whole stream into positioning themselves by offering DARPE as a platform for webinars, and where we disseminate knowledge and disseminate best practices and success stories. So these organizations can position themselves more broadly, position and market themselves. And by the end of the day, the organizations, by scouting and identifying tenders and grants, going to engaging with the clients and partners, then market themselves, what we call positioning, then they are ready to write an informative proposal that is thoughtful, competitive, and client-focused. By theory and by practice, this increases the potentiality of winning to 80%. Today, we have Grand Challenge Canada with us. This is our co-host, which is Annie on the other side. Hi, Annie.
Hello, everybody.
The Grand Challenge Canada is an international organization, and they support innovative ideas and innovative projects that will make a social impact that is sustainable. Grand Challenge Canada is operated from Toronto, from Canada, funded by different organizations as well as individuals. Currently they have a project, a request for a proposal, request for application for grassroots organizations or national organizations, even private sector companies, to apply for, so they can reach the outcomes and the results regarding women empowerment or women rights that Annie will further describe now, their objectives, the outcomes they want, and the application process and the proposal requirements. So I will leave the presentation, the whole webinar, it will be 1 hour. It will be as follows. Annie will go into her presentation. She will explain the requirements, explain the objectives, the methodologies sought for, application requirements, eligibility, and proposal requirements. And then we will, if you have any questions, just write your questions in the chat, and then Annie will read the questions and answer them at the end of the webinar. Thank you very much for listening. Annie, you have the floor now, please.
Great, thank you very much, Ala. I'll just share my screen with everybody. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, it's clear, yeah.
Perfect. Great, so hello everybody. As Alice said, my name is Annie Cameron and I am the Program Associate on the Options for Pregnancy Termination Innovation Initiative at Grand Challenges Canada. And we're very excited to be speaking with all of you today about this funding opportunity. I'll start by just giving you a brief overview of the initiative for those of you who aren't familiar with it yet. This slide provides us an overall summary of the initiative. So the goal of the Options for Pregnancy Termination Innovation Initiative, or the Options Initiative for short, is to support bold ideas with big impact for women's and girls' access to safe abortion in low and middle income countries. We are seeking innovative and transformative approaches that put women and girls in control of where, when, and how they terminate their pregnancy. Within this initiative, we have two different categories. The first are innovations that increase early access to existing abortion products and services. So that would be manual vacuum aspiration or medication abortion. The second is developing and testing next generation methods of abortion. So this would be any new method beyond manual vacuum aspiration or medication abortion. And we'll go into a bit more detail on both of those here. So this breaks down that first area of focus. And just so that you all know, this information is all available in the request for proposals, which you may have seen already. If not, we'll be sure to circulate the link again after this webinar. But this information is all available for you there. So the first area of focus is looking at increasing access to existing methods of abortion. And this could be done by any of the ways in this list, but this list is also not meant to be exhaustive. So there could be other ways of increasing access as well. But a few ideas would be increasing the number of trained providers and available safe services, improving access to information about safe abortion, combating stigma by reframing and normalizing abortion, decentralizing and demedicalizing abortion care, tackling the economic barriers to women and girls accessing safe abortion, and reclassifying existing abortion methods to fit within relevant regulatory frameworks. The second area of focus is looking at introducing a next generation method of safe abortion that could provide one or more improvements over the two currently existing methods. Again, this list is not exhaustive, but it's meant to give you a few ideas for things that we would look for in a next generation method of pregnancy termination that could be really transformative. The first would be the ability to be effectively administered at later stages in gestation. Of course, the next generation method would have to have a high effectiveness at inducing an abortion, and ideally it would give women and girls the ability to self-administer with a high degree of autonomy and privacy. Another idea could be the improved ease of compliance. So for example, this would mean a single pill or fewer pill administration compared to the current medication abortion protocol, something with reduced side effects and pain, an improved stability profile, something that would be permissive within existing regulatory frameworks. So for example, a drug that is maybe already registered in countries for other indications and is already easily accessible that would be able to be used to induce abortions. And finally, something that would be cost effective. These are all proof of concept grants or seed grants, which we'll get into a bit more later. But essentially, what we're looking for is a specific idea that you want to test out. And by the end of the grant period, the idea is that you would be able to tell if your idea has an impact on access to safe abortion for women and girls. So these are a few of the outcomes that we would look for at the end of that period. Did the idea have an impact on the access to existing methods of safe abortion in a low and middle income country? Did it reduce the delays for a woman's decision to seek care, reach a facility, or receive care? And on the next generation method side of things, was there scientific evidence produced that a new drug or formulation or prototype for abortion has improvements over existing methods? This outlines the basic parameters of these awards. So as I said, they're all seed grants, which means they are up to 250,000 Canadian dollars. And the grant periods will be for a period of 18 to 24 months. Assuming we receive a high number of high quality proposals this round, we are aiming to give out 20 grants. And the target beneficiaries are women and girls in low and middle income countries. A caveat to that is that on the next generation method side of things, of course, a new method of abortion may benefit women globally, but we want to make sure that the women and girls in low and middle income countries are kept front of mind and that these new methods would be primarily applicable and accessible to them. Geographically, the restrictions depend on the area of focus once again. So for that first area of focus, improving access to existing methods, the innovations must actually be implemented in a low and middle income country within that 18 to 24 month grant period. For the next generation method innovations, we expect that these may be very early stage. So they can be developed and tested in any country during these 18 to 24 months, including high income countries. These next two slides will just take a look at the eligibility criteria. So as Ala mentioned, we accept applications from any recognized institution or social enterprise. So you can be not-for-profit, for-profit, an academic institution, really anything that's a legally incorporated institution. We're not able to fund any previous or current direct grantees of the very large anonymous donor. If you're not sure what that means and you haven't heard that term, very large anonymous donor, before, then most likely this does not apply to you and you don't need to worry about it, and you should be eligible. If you're not sure if this applies to you or not, then you are welcome to send us an email with a list of your previous and current funding sources, and we can confirm for you if this applies to you or not. Again, looking at the geographic breakdown, for the access category, that first category, we will only fund innovators based in a low and middle income country. So that means that the institution has to be legally incorporated in a lower middle income country. Again, for the next generation methods, we will fund institutions worldwide, high income countries, low income countries alike. These next few points are fairly self-explanatory, but of course the institution has to be capable of receiving and administering the grant funding and be able to successfully execute on the activities that they are proposing. And this last point is about United Nations country offices. UN country offices are ineligible to apply because what we've found in the past is that they're unable to comply with the terms of our awards. So UN country offices are ineligible. But if you have another local partner, implementing partner, or partner that you work with, they may be eligible to submit an application and to administer the funding themselves. An application can only have one project lead listed on it, and the project lead must be directly affiliated with the institution from which the proposal is being submitted. Of course, we welcome collaboration. There's a section in the application form where you can list out your collaborators and what their roles will be. But for the purposes of submitting an application, there needs to be one clear lead on it. And that lead may only submit one application. So one application per person. There's also a limit on the number of applications per institution. So each institution may submit one application per focus area of the RFP. What that means is you could submit one application for increasing access and another for a next generation method. For universities, since these are much larger institutions, one proposal per focus area will be accepted from any given research center within the university. And finally, if any of you are familiar with the first round of options, project leads funded under round one will be ineligible to submit another application. However, institutions funded under round one are eligible to apply if all of the other criteria have been met. So if it's an institution that we've already funded but has a new project lead and some of these new eligibility criteria are met, then the institution is more than welcome to submit another application. The focus of the Options Initiative is on addressing barriers that limit access to safe abortion in countries where there are one or more legal grounds to support it. Although we recognize prohibitive laws and policies as a key determinant to the uptake of safe abortion services, legal reform is not an objective of this call. So we would not fund an advocacy innovation, for example. However, we do have that point about increasing awareness and increasing knowledge of safe abortion services. So if your innovation falls under that category, then you're more than welcome to submit that idea. But in countries where there are absolutely no legal grounds to support abortion, if it was sort of more of an advocacy or lobbying innovation, that's not something that would be within the scope of this call. To give you a sense of a few other things that would not be within the scope of this call, we do not fund purely capacity building initiatives or ongoing programmatic funding. Again, the point of these seed grants is that they're testing a specific new idea. So we don't deploy funding for ongoing programs, but rather for testing a new innovation to see if it works or not. Of course, ideas that are not applicable to women and girls in low and middle income countries, and ideas that do not push the field beyond the current paradigms. Another important point on the next generation methods of abortion is that these must be actually entirely new methods of abortion itself. So we receive a number of questions about products or innovations that are complementary to existing abortion methods, such as, for example, a new type of pregnancy test. And while we recognize that those are very innovative ideas, they're not exactly what we're looking for here. So the next generation method of abortion would have to actually be a new method of abortion beyond the existing manual vacuum aspiration or medication abortion. And finally, innovations that are similar to innovations previously funded by Grand Challenges Canada. And the best way to look for these is actually on the Options Initiative website. There is a tab that shows the innovators we have supported in round one. You can see very brief project summaries there. And any ideas that are very, very similar to what we've already supported, we would not support again. As well as if there are two ideas submitted this round that are very, very similar, and they both end up in the top 20, the higher ranking of the two would be funded. This just shows a few things that we're prioritizing this round. So we really want to support new entrants to the safe abortion space and find innovators that bring a fresh perspective. So what this means is that even if your institution or organization hasn't worked extensively in safe abortion in the past, that is totally fine with us. We still really strongly encourage you to apply. We are really hoping to find these very novel ideas and to support these new entrants and sort of unusual suspects within the safe abortion field. And this is actually part of our evaluation criteria. And so these new entrants will be viewed favorably in the review process. The next generation method, we typically receive many more of the access applications than the next generation method. So we're hoping to increase that this round. And if you have any ideas for a next generation method, we would strongly encourage you to apply. And finally, just want to really emphasize that we're looking to support blue sky ideas. So these can be ideas at any stage, including if it's very, very early stage. These are seed grants, proof of concept grants. So we would love to hear your ideas. I'll just quickly go over the application process now so that you know how that works. To apply for an options award, you must apply through our online portal, which is called Flux. Again, this is all in the RFP, so you have all this information and these links available. But essentially, you go to gcc.flux.io, and if you already have an account, if you've applied for any Grand Challenges Canada award in the past, then you'll be able to simply log in on the left-hand side here. And if you forget your password, there's a reset button below. If you have never applied for funding from Grand Challenges Canada before, then you'll have to create an account, which you can see here on the right. And you just put in your basic information. and allow 1 business day for us to get back to you, and then you'll be able to sign in and access the form. Once you sign in, on the welcome page, you'll see a little blurb about the Options Initiative, and there's a button to start the application. And once you start the application, you can save it and return to it at any time. So you don't need to do it all in one sitting by any means. In the bottom right of the screen, you will find this Save button here. And then when you log back in, you'll be able to open up your application from the Drafts menu, click on the Edit button, and continue working on it. When you are done editing, you'll need to save and then click this Submit button that you can see here at the bottom. Once you submit, you will no longer be able to access the application or to edit it, so please take care when completing the form. And please ensure that you click Submit by February 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, as that is the deadline for the submissions. If you go onto the options website, you will see a long document with many frequently asked questions. So if you have any questions, we'd strongly encourage you to take a read through that. But we'll just go through a couple of the ones that we receive most often. We've just gone over most of this, so may not come as a big surprise, but just to sort of drive home a few of these key points. A question we receive often is, if my innovation is not targeting the beneficiaries mentioned in the RFP, can I receive funding? The short answer is no. Proposals which do not address women and girls in eligible low and middle income countries will not be considered for funding. But keep in mind that for those next generation methods of abortion, they can be developed and tested in any country, including high income countries at this time. How do I know which countries are eligible to apply? Once again, only institutions legally incorporated in a lower middle income country are eligible to apply for that first area of focus, the increasing access to existing methods focus. And institutions from all countries are eligible for the next generation methods. How do I know which countries are eligible for implementation? This again goes similar to the previous question. For the access, it must be in a low and middle income country. And to find that list, if you open up the options request for proposals and you go down to the very end of the document, in the appendix, you will find a list of the World Bank classified low and middle income countries. How would I know if I've received funding from the very large anonymous donor? Once again, if you have never heard this term before, if you're not sure what it means, then you can most likely just ignore it. If you have any concerns and you're not sure if you have been funded by this donor, then please send us an email with your funding sources and we will let you know. Is it possible to submit a proposal focused on advocacy, policy, or legal reform? Once again, we recognize prohibitive laws as a key determinant to the uptake of safe abortion services, but policy and legal reform are not objectives of this call. So we are focusing on innovations in countries where there is at least one legal ground to support safe abortion. And finally, do I require co-funding? No, co-funding is not a requirement at this stage. For proof of concept awards, we do not require co-funding. If any of you are familiar with Grand Challenges Canada's Transition to Scale program, that is the level at which a match funding is required. But for these awards, for the $250,000 seed awards, no co-funding or match funding is required. And now I'll just go through a few sort of tips and tricks for the application and give you a sense of what the application form looks like. The first section, and one of the most important sections in the application, is the project summary. The project summary consists of the 4 questions that you see here. They're fairly short answers, and they just ask, what is the problem addressed by your innovation? What is your proposed innovation? What are the current approaches to the problem, and how will your innovation address it more effectively? And finally, how is your innovation relevant to vulnerable and marginalized women and girls in low and middle income countries. This is a very, very important section because this is all that is reviewed in the first screen of the review process. So if you're interested in learning more about the review process, it's written in detail in the RFP. But to give you a quick summary, essentially the way it works is once we receive all of the applications, we first do an eligibility screen to ensure that all of the applications meet the basic eligibility criteria. We then do what's called an innovation screen, which is where 3 different reviewers review only this section, only these 4 questions. And then after that screen, the applications that pass the innovation screen go on to the more in-depth peer review stage, where the whole application is reviewed in depth by 3 different reviewers. So that's why these 4 questions are very important, because in round 1, to give you a sense of the numbers, in round 1, 70% of the applications didn't make it past this initial screen. So it's very important that these 4 questions very clearly articulate what your idea is. So a few tips here for strong applications. The first is to define a very specific problem in the context of your proposed innovation. And a problem that we see often here is for the what is the problem addressed by your innovation, we get very general answers such as there are 25 million unsafe abortions that happen every year around the world. We certainly recognize that that is a huge problem and the broader problem that Options is trying to address. But what we're interested in here is the specific problem in the context where you would work and how your innovation tackles that more directly. A clear articulation of what the proposed idea is. So once again, for those first set of reviewers, they will only see this description of the innovation. So it's not very helpful to sort of reference ideas that are described in more detail below. You need to make sure that you have a very concise sort of elevator pitch of what that innovation is in this section. It's also important to clearly explain why the proposed idea is novel. What are the current approaches and why is this an improvement over those? And of course, something that clearly shows the relevance to either the first or second focus area and clearly shows that it's within the scope of these funding parameters. Now we'll go through all of the other sections in the application, and just so that you know, these are just summary slides. So you'll have to actually access the application in Flux to see all of the questions and their various word limits. But these questions that we've listed on the slides are just to give you sort of an overarching sense of the types of questions that are going to be asked in each section. The first section is looking at the boldness, creativity, and integrated innovation aspects of your application. Integrated innovation is a term we use at Grand Challenges Canada that means the integration of scientific or technological, social, and business innovation within your idea. We, of course, recognize that different ideas will be more heavily weighted in different areas than others. Some may be very, very heavy on the scientific or technological innovation and less so on the social and business side of things. Some may be very focused on social innovation and less so on the scientific side of things, and so on. But what we look for is that all 3 of these pillars have been considered in your idea. So strong applications here will clearly explain what is innovative and different and bold about the idea. Has it ever been done before? Has it been done in a different context and you want to try it in a new context? These types of things. So really clearly articulating what makes it novel. And then again, looking at those 3 different pillars and touching on all of those points to show that you've considered all of these sort of perspectives of innovation. Next is the project execution plan and technical merit. So what we're looking for here is a very clear definition of what the proof of concept is that you're trying to establish within the timeframe of the grant, and how you will demonstrate if that has been achieved or not by the end of the grant period. This is something that confuses a lot of people. And so I think it's important to note that what we mean by what is the proof of concept is how will you know at the end of your award if your idea was successful or not. So once again, these are new ideas that are being tested out. And what we want to see is that you sort of clearly defined the innovation or the idea that you are testing, and you've clearly set a threshold for how you will know if it works or if it doesn't work. And in this section, we're looking for a lot of detail about how you would measure that success and what the project activities would be. So another sort of common pitfall we see in proposals is that this section is very, very general and doesn't give a lot of details about how the 18 to 24 months would actually be used. So our recommendation is to have a detailed description of the proposed project activities and approximate timelines. So what you would be doing, months 1 to 3, 4 to 6, however it makes sense to break it down for you, but giving those sort of very clear timelines and activities. And to touch on the proof of concept idea once again, you can find this in the RFP, but it may be helpful to think of proof of concept as one of these 3 things. So for the first area of focus, your proof of concept would be some sort of evidence from a controlled setting that the innovation improves access to safe abortion or reduces barriers to safe abortion. We'd also look for evidence that the innovation can be feasibly implemented and sustained and financially supported at scale, and that there's demonstrated interest or commitments for uptake of the innovation from key stakeholders or key partners needed to enable scale and sustainability. Now, don't let this last point discourage you at all. Once again, we know that these would be very, very early stage blue sky ideas, but this is just intended to get you thinking more towards 2 years down the road when your potential award would be ending. These are the types of things that we would then look for innovations we would consider for transitioning to scale. So you don't necessarily need to have demonstrated interest from key stakeholders at this point, of course, because these are new ideas that haven't even been tried and tested yet. But the idea is that closer to the end of the award, if it's proving successful, you've already started thinking about those types of partnerships that would set you up for success at the next level of funding. The next section is the expected health results. And here you'll be asked to indicate your expected results over, first of all, the timeline of your award, so 18 to 24 months, and second of all, over 3 to 5 years. Our biggest tip here is to provide actual estimates for the number of women and girls that will be reached within the innovation within both time periods. The common mistake we see here are innovators writing very general statements like, we will reach all of the women in X country. That is not as helpful as sort of a very specific sort of idea, such as, this is the number of women of reproductive age in this county of this country, and we expect to be able to reach this percentage of them. So we know that with these small seed proof of concept awards, you won't be scaling across an entire country at this point, or it's unlikely. So what we're looking for is really just that you've very much thought out what a sort of realistic number would be. And the next section is on scale and sustainability. As I mentioned before, don't let this discourage you, but it's more of thinking in the future type of question. So showing that you've already thought through, if your idea does prove to be successful, what would the potential path to scale be? So would it be through a private or public partnership? What are the partners or stakeholders that you would need to be engaging? How would you leverage and generate additional funding? And what other regions or countries could the idea potentially be replicated within? So thinking through at this stage these types of things and including details about that in your answer would be very helpful. But of course, these things don't all have to be finalized and locked down yet, because that's what we look for more of the transition to scale phase. And finally, the project lead and team. So this is really just for us to get a sense of the institution, the longevity of the institution, the amount of funding you received, the type of track records you have, who the project lead is, what the relevant experience is, both on the leadership team and the implementation team, and clearly describing who are the collaborators and what will their specific roles be. Again, as we mentioned before, we really want to support new entrants to the space. So here, if you can elaborate on why your institution or your team would bring value and bring new perspectives to the space, how it's positioned to introduce novel ways of addressing this problem, that would be very helpful. And I'll just wrap up quickly here, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions. So the most important deadline on this slide is February 11th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which is the deadline to submit an application. Since it takes, as we mentioned, about a day or so to register your account on Flux, we suggest registering no later than February 4th. I would actually suggest registering much further in advance of that, but certainly no later than February 4th to have sufficient time for your registration to be processed and to access the application form. And once we receive all the applications on February 11th and we go through the review cycle, we intend to notify you of your application status by the end of June. And the successful applications will then go through a 3-month negotiation period of sort of setting up the terms of your award. And we anticipate that the projects would start by the end of September 2020. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was helpful. The info@optionsinitiative.org email address here, you can feel free to reach out to with any questions, and we'd be happy to get back to you. Once again, the application deadline, February 11th. Thank you so much for the time and effort that you put into these applications. We are really, really looking forward to receiving them. And we would also be most appreciative if you could help circulate the RFP amongst others in your networks. So any other groups or people that you know who you think might have an idea, we would love if you could share the RFP with them. And we look forward to receiving all of those ideas. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annie, for this great presentation. It's really very interesting. Just to alert everyone who is attending this webinar that the request for proposal itself in English and the summary of it in Arabic and in other languages are available on DARPE website. It's open for everyone. Just on the home page, look at the sections called Featured Opportunities, and then you will check the options. You will see the options project. Click on it, you will find more information about today's webinar, as well as the request for proposals for you to download, read, and respond. If anyone has any question, please write it now. So Annie, while she is here, she can respond to your questions. Please put your questions in the chat area, just whatever question you have. So think of your questions, brainstorm. Frankly, this is a great project. And from my experience, I think it's Grand Challenge Canada is the right partner to work with. They work, as you have seen, the project, they started from the proof of concept into scale up and a transition to scale. So they work shoulder to shoulder with the grantees and they really support the grantees. So the relationship, it will not be like a donor and a contractor rather than partner. This will build the capacity and will overcome challenges easier, and the project implementation will be very, very meaningful and interesting to bid and to enter this kind of partnership. And as you have seen in the presentation, that they really focus on the people, on the women themselves. So the theory of the change of the whole project is by increasing access to health services and increasing awareness and increasing understanding of the rights, as well as innovation in medical, in health. This will provide a better situation for women who are suffering and will relieve suffering and enhance their human rights. It's really interesting, and that's why they are looking for innovative ideas from grassroots organizations. The most interesting thing in this proposal, this RFP, is that it's really integrated, and it goes you from one stage to another stage to a third stage to very great ideas, and even the process of evaluation of the proposals, going from eligibility, a checklist, and then going to innovation screens, and then to a peer review of 3 people reviewing the proposals. It's really interesting, and it's I think any proposal writer, any partnership specialist, any business developer or CEO or a board member of an organization would be, they should be interested to work on such project, because it's helpful for the woman, for the human rights on one hand, as well as it will build capacity for the organizations themselves. So thank you, Annie, for your presentation. So I can't see any question here. So do you have any questions?
I'm receiving a few questions come through on my end, Alice. So maybe I'll just address them for the whole group.
Please go ahead.
Received is about eligibility and if NGOs should be registered in the country of implementation. Great question. If applying to the first area of focus, the access to existing methods, your organization must be legally incorporated in any low or middle income country. Most likely that is the country of implementation, but sometimes there are little exceptions to that. But to be eligible, it would be registered in any low or middle income country. If applying to the second area of focus, the next generation methods, then your organization could be legally incorporated in any country worldwide, including high income. The next question I received is about the next generation methods. And this is somebody who missed the first part of the presentation and would like to learn more about it and is wondering if it's related to abortion as well. Yes, so what we are looking for here are next generation methods of abortion. If you review the request for proposals, then you will be able to see in the first couple pages what types of things we're looking for in those next generation methods. But it would be a method of abortion distinct from manual vacuum aspiration or medication abortion, that would have improvements over one of those approaches. So that could be, being able to be administered at later stages in gestation, having reduced side effects, giving women and girls greater autonomy and privacy to self-administer. There are a number of ideas listed in the RFP, so I'd encourage you to look there. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to chat with you more about that. I'll type my email address into the chat box for everybody. The next question is about targeting girls and age of consent, specifically for sexual and reproductive health services and rights. Besides increasing access to safe abortion, would we be able to work on this issue? To decrease unwanted pregnancies? Yeah, so great question from Joanna. Thanks for clarifying this. The question is around if we would support innovations that decrease unwanted pregnancies, so working more on the prevention side of things. The short answer to this is no. Options is very much focused on abortion specifically, and so to be within scope of the Options Initiative, it would need to actually be improving access to abortion services for women and girls who have unwanted or unplanned pregnancies. That said, some innovations that work on improving access to abortion also improve access to preventative measures, family planning, things like this. If that is sort of a secondary endpoint, then that is more than welcome, but the primary endpoint has to be improved access to safe abortion. And without that abortion aspect, it wouldn't be considered within scope. Next question says, can we submit a proposal for building the capacity of physicians to be able to make right and safe abortion in medically needed emergency cases, as this is the only legal allowed form of abortion in my country? Yes, certainly. Once again, if there is even just one legal ground for safe abortion in your country, then we are able to support that work. So if that is the only ground within your country, and you have an idea for how to improve that and make that more safe and accessible for women, then that would certainly be within scope, and we'd encourage you to apply with that idea. Next idea says, it's a question regarding innovative methods for abortion which are available in higher income countries, which are inherently not available through medical facilities in low and middle income countries. Would it be possible to import this method to Palestine, for example, through a private company? Would this be something that could possibly be funded? Interesting idea. This sounds like maybe something that would be more helpful to talk about in detail offline. But if I understand correctly, you're wondering about making an existing method of abortion available in Palestine. So that would fall within that first area of focus, increasing access to an existing method of abortion. So that would be within scope. If you have an innovative idea for how to get that method into Palestine, you mentioned about through a private company, as long as it's an innovative way to make that method of abortion accessible within the context, then that would certainly be within scope. We encourage you to apply. And if you have any more specific questions, then once again, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'll put my email in right now as I've caught up on all the questions. There's my email, anne-isabel.cameron@grandchallenges.ca. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And one other point that I should have mentioned during the presentation is that as Ala mentioned, on our website, you will find the full request for proposals in English and French, and then an overview of the request for proposals in a number of other languages, including Arabic. Just to be very clear, we can only accept applications in English or French. So although we have those other languages available to give an overview of the initiative, the applications themselves must be submitted in either English or French.
Excellent. And I just want to again remind the attendees that the RFP is on the Grand Challenge Canada website, as well as it's on DARPE, www.darpe.me website, and you can download these RFPs. And just to remind everyone that the deadline is February 11th. So it's like almost a 1 month to prepare such as innovative ideas and a good proposal to be selected. Any other questions? Okay, Annie. So would you close, please? Can we close now, Annie, or do you have anything to add?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you all so much for your time. My email address is in the chat, so please feel free to reach out with any other questions, and we look forward to receiving your ideas. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Annie, very much for your time, and have a nice day. And thank you, everyone, for attending this webinar. I'm sure that it has been useful and helpful for growing your businesses and organizations, as well as benefiting the Middle Eastern people with a better welfare and better life. Thank you very much. All the best.